That can often be a very strong strategy, but that does involve either picking up every single one of your burn spells in combination with Ice Block, or getting in some early chip damage with a Mana Worm.
Mana Worm's a helpful pickup as we begin game number 1 of Celestial versus RNG in the winner's bracket. Winner of the series goes through to the grand finals tomorrow. Loser has to play against Planet Odd for their place in the grand finals.
That's right. So at this point, guaranteed at least 3rd or 4th place, I believe, which is a very, very respectable prize pool. But at this point, it's almost less about the jumps up in money. It's just about getting that trophy, putting your name on the 2017 Gold Club World Championship.
Yeah, but Baiza wants 2nd.
Oh.
Baiza doesn't want 3rd or 4th.
I'm sure she'd settle for 1st.
Maybe. As we start with the Mana Worm into the Primordial Glyph, that is a reasonable start from Leo. He'd probably prefer Arcanologist into Kirintor Mage plus Secret, but hey, this is going to start buffing that Mana Worm immediately if Mitsuhide doesn't deal with it already, and it doesn't look like he can just yet.
He can't quite yet, but he's got an interesting hand here. It's not a fantastic hand, to be honest. He'd much rather be looking for some early minions to get board control, follow up with things like Scalebane to really amp up the pressure. Obviously, Keleseth being number 1, but he can do a pretty good job here of keeping some early board control as he just launches down the Pirate.
Wow. This is potentially a big Edwin game. If he can wait until turn 3, coin, deckhand, Shadow Step, deckhand, Edwin, that's a play.
It's true.
If he can have something stick to the board, then he could actually do that next turn. Coin, Shadow Step, Minion, Edwin. And that's very big for this early stage of the game.
And so I think here for Mitsuhide, he's already mapped out the next 3 turns.
Yeah.
He is thinking now, I go for this on 1, the ping and the Mana Worm kills off my stuff.
Yep.
Turn 2, I can dagger up. And then turn 3, I can go deckhand, coin, Edwin, maybe with a Shadow Step thrown in there to really beef things up. So already, I know Mitsuhide will have considered all this stuff. He will have mapped out this possibility, and you know, if from Leo something comes down like an Arcanologist instead, hey, he's just played a nice couple of minions to start combating against those minions from his opponent.
That backstab would have been so great in the hand for Mitsuhide last turn. Imagine he could have traded, or played the backstab, then traded the patches in, had the 2-1 stick. But now he's going to do as you said. I don't see any other possibility really other than daggering up and starting to hit down that Mana Worm. He could consider coining out a 4-4 Edwin, but with the potential of his hand at the moment, I don't think he'd want to waste that card.
Yeah, I think this is way better. He can potentially not even use the coin on Edwin. We could just see it on turn 4 or 5. But yeah, I much prefer taking it a bit slower, because if something like a Frostbolt comes down, you know, this Edwin just becomes significantly less powerful as a 4-4. I like taking it a little bit slow here, taking a small amount of damage in the early game, but still keeping his health total very respectable.
Now, Leo has a couple options. He could play the Ice Barrier, but I do much prefer this. The potential to get that Mana Worm much bigger, maybe get a Frostbolt to use on Mitsuhide's face so that the Mana Worm survives.
Right.
That seems good too. These are okay. Spellbender doesn't look horrible. It would prevent the Shadow Step from going off. There's a very interesting interaction there.
That's true. That is true. However, I think he's... This is actually really tough. If he goes with the Firelands, he's kind of seceding board control for the moment, but the amount of extra burst he can deliver would be so strong. And to be honest, Firelands on turn 5 probably regains him board control.
Yeah, you're right, you're right. Firelands is just too strong at 5 mana to not play it. As Mitsuhide picks up the Tar Creeper, he could consider playing that and hitting the dagger into the Mana Worm, but I think it's go time. Let's just get on and win this game.
Oh wow, going with the Shadow Step as well. Okay, so if he is going to go for Edwin on this turn, I think this is the way to go, because you leave yourself less vulnerable to Fireball, obviously, which is, well, we know it's in the deck because we've seen almost all the cards from Leo.
I was wondering for a second if he was going to backstab the 2-1.
Oh, right.
Really push it. No, this is better.
Yeah.
For all he knows, there's a polymorph in Leo's hand.
Yeah, the just using the Shadow Step here is effectively a 0 mana +4/+4 on what the Edwin is trying to do. So I definitely like throwing it down here. I liked maybe considering holding it back here, going for the Tar Creeper here, and then on the following turn he could go Deckhand Shadow Step Edwin, or Deckhand Shadow Step Deckhand Edwin, make an 8/8 and lead into Coin Cairn. Was definitely worth considering for a bit more even keel, you know, not any particular power spikes. But with this line of play, it effectively demands an answer from Leo, and with what we can assume is no polymorphs in the deck, it's got a very good chance of connecting face.
Yeah, the only threat really is the Primordial Glyph, but I don't think Leo would ever have picked that anyway, even if it was offered. We've not seen many, if any, huge, impactful Edwins like this in this tournament, but this is the reason it's in the deck. This is what that card is capable of doing, and this might just be GG.
As Blizzard, Fireball, Frozen Clone is not what you're looking for, but out of these options, with the Fireball, that's actually quite a lot of burn he's starting to pick up, and he could maybe start looking to go for the burn plan, but I think he would just be dead a bit too quickly, so he does fire it off here, setting up for the 2-turn kill. However, this does leave an Edwin free to attack in this turn, and it leaves a deckhand able to keep plowing to the face.
If Mitsuhide has any idea what to expect here, like if he knew there was a Firelands portal, he'd play the Tar Creeper, he'd Cold Blood the deckhand, and just keep smacking this damage into the face, because the Firelands portal takes up all of Leo's mana. But it's so difficult to predict what that card could be in the glyph.
Yep.
So what else could Mitsuhide be expecting? Maybe Frostbolt Ping? That would still... No, because the Frostbolt would have been played last turn, so it won't be that. Yeah,
I'm trying to think as well. If it was Meteor off of the glyph, it would obviously have come down that turn to take out everything. And to be honest, that's actually something Mitsuhide should maybe have considered, because that would leave him in a really, really bad spot if it was Meteor off of glyph. But obviously that's only one card, and maybe that's being a bit too cautious. So the amount of things he's actually afraid of with this setup is fairly small. Maybe it's just another Fireball in hand, which would also not leave mana for the ping, or the Firelands off of glyph.
Can Mitsuhide spot it even without perfect caster vision? No, but that's fine. He's playing conservatively. The Cold Blood should still be relevant over the next few turns.
Yeah. To be honest though, at later stages of the game, I don't know if he's expecting Cold Blood to connect for more than one at a time anyway, because it's very likely that you throw it down on something, and then Blizzard, Flame Strike, something like that will just come along and completely destroy it instantly.
So you'd have liked to see it that turn?
I wouldn't have hated it at all. Wouldn't have hated it.
It's easy for us to say from where we're sitting, looking at both hands, but it was a tough turn for Mitsuhide, and this works out very nicely.
It's putting his opponent on exactly one card. On the last turn, it was something like Polymorph off of Glyph or Meteor off of Glyph. On this turn, it's Blizzard. He's saying you have to have it here, or maybe a Frost Nova to be able to stop this damage coming in. Or a Meteor as well, I suppose, does massively mitigate the amount of pressure that Mitsu can push forward. Yeah,
it removes all but one damage from the board, plus the dagger, of course. But then that still leaves Mitsuhide 3 off lethal, and there are loads of cards in his deck that could finish this up. Is there a better play? I don't think there is.
And therefore, potentially some slight positioning from Mitsuhide could have got the Meteor to only take out the 1-1 rather than the 1-2 as well. And while that may not make the difference, at 5 health, every point of damage matters as you're just trying to eke over the finish line.
Playing around positioning cards is quite tricky because it's something you just have to constantly think about and remind yourself about when you're playing against the specific class. The Meteor is in Leo's deck, so if Mitsuhide has a good enough memory of the deck list, he should know it's in there.
And it's good Hearthstone manners. It's just good practice to get into the mindset of always playing around Meteor in this and Explosive Shot and
Betrayal?
I suppose Betrayal, Crushing Walls in the new expansion as well for Hunter. Things like this that could maybe pop up off of some random effect, or if it's in the deck as well.
1 mana off lethal for Mitsuhide right now, but he can still just drop the can. He's in a fine position. Leo does have Ice Barrier in hand, so he can heal himself a little bit, but it's getting really close.
It is, but to be honest, I don't quite see it here for Leo. He's got some of the late game power cards, like obviously the Portal and Medivh, but they're not really good defensive options quite so much. Firelands Portal, unless he can get some kind of a taunt or maybe a heal with Halazil the Ascended, is not really going to be getting the job done, as if he just goes for it this turn, he will just be dead. Unless, obviously, as I said, a taunt comes down.
Leo heals up to 11, and Mitsuhide is going to have 9 damage. He won't quite have the mana to fit the dagger in. So Leo just about survives in the meantime. Mana Worm. I'm looking at Mana Worm, Arcanologist, Ice Barrier. If he fits in the ping, then he can remove that one additional bit of damage from Mitsuhide. So maybe it is just Mana Worm, Ice Barrier, and ping. Leo has to play to survive here. He could play the Doomsayer. Yeah. Okay, I like this as well.
Yeah, this is really nice from Leo. He, you know, with Bone Mare on 7, that backstab has been there for ages, so he probably assumes that that backstab is the Bone Mare rather than the card that was found off the top. And it also just means that this Ice Barrier very possibly can't even be procced on this turn, because it will have to be, if it is a Bone Mare, coming down to take out the Doomsayer.
So it does buy Leo one additional turn, but the problem is we're sort of playing to survive, not playing to win at the moment.
But Mitsu might actually just go face here, because whether it's Ice Barrier or Ice Block, he's still leaving his opponent at 3.
Right.
And then on the following turn, the weapon and the SI7 agent would close out the game. But I guess with this line of play, you're still threatening lethal on the following turn, and you've still got that very impressive board. That's
a very good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that, but going face was certainly an option. Mitsuhide may not have had something to backstab to proc the SI7 agent, may not have had a cheap enough card to do it, but I think in most cases, you're right, that should have worked out nicely.
It's like every card other than Lich King and Bone Mare that gets him it. And if he picks up Lich King off the top, he's picked up Lich King off the top, so he wouldn't be too upset.
Because they need to fit the dagger in as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah, fair enough, good point. But yeah, the thing is, if it was Ice Barrier, it might have worked out. If it was Ice Barrier, it works out better this way. If it's Ice Block, it's more arguable, because then you can maybe get 2-turn lethal. But with this line of play, it's going to be lethal on board if Mitsu can see it. And I'm sure he will be testing it. He can even go for backstab on the 4-2, send this to face, and then realize, yeah, this is probably going to be doing it.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different ways of doing this now. Mitsuhide can just do it with the 2 SI7 agents alone without even proccing the Ice Barrier. No matter what combination of cards, he always wins as long as he... Well, he just always wins.
Yeah. And this is going to be game number 1 going for Mitsuhide. I wonder if maybe he could have sequenced it a bit better, because he could have gone for the SI7 agent first, so that if it was Ice Block, he could get himself a chance to pop out 1.
That's true.
But either way, it does end up the victor in this particular game. And now it's going to have to be finding a counter from RNG against the Rogue, which so consistently in this tournament has been very, very difficult to counter.
It's like trying to find Nemo. It's not easy finding a counter to the Rogue, because I don't think one really exists.
It's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands.
Oh, I've tried that a few times.
Any luck?
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Nor have I had any luck trying to counter Rogue, if I'm honest. Like, in theory, Mage should be one of the counters. It's got all of the board clears, but the problem is that Bone Mare, the Scalebane, they're so powerful, their bodies are so large that Flame Strike just doesn't touch these cards.
Yeah, well, Flame Strike very likely isn't even in the deck for RNG, as they go for a more freeze plan.
Meteor instead for RNG, I guess.
Yeah, I think with the freeze cards thrown in there, I can agree with you. It's got a decent shot of taking down the Rogue. But in some lists that don't even run the freeze, then it's really starting to struggle, because your removal just cannot get the job done against the board that are so tempo heavy and oftentimes value heavy from the Rogue as well. But yeah, in this particular game, not quite coming through for RNG, as they couldn't get to the point where Alex Straza and Burn closes it out, as we saw in one of the previous games they had against Rogue with this Burn Mage, and also not finding the removal to just take out the early aggression.
That was a nice moment to watch just for a moment there. Team RNG, although defeated, they had a bit of a laugh together before sending Kylan's up to take his shot against the Rogue. He's been playing Rogue himself, Mage and Shaman. Rogue and Shaman being the 2 of the classes that have been seen sweeping entirely in this tournament. Which one do you think he'll go for?
Well, the Rogue is obviously already banned by Celestial, so it's going to have to be something different. I was looking at, you know, as you said, maybe the Shaman, because it does have at least one Galactic... Oh, no, sorry, that's Team Celestial's list. For RNG, the Shaman does have... Okay, it does have a Galactic Crawler, so maybe could be a counter. But yeah, this seems to be maybe more the way you'd go, but it's not a particularly favourable matchup either way.
You just cue the other best unbanned deck in the current, well, Knights of the Frozen Throne meta. It's not even right to call it the current meta anymore. Things have moved on since these decks were submitted, but let's give this a shot. Kylan's versus Mitsuhide. Round 2.
And if we take a look at RNG's Druid list, it is one of the most tech-heavy lists I have ever seen. They are running double Dirty Rat, double Galactic Crawler, double Mind Control tech, and a single Spellbreaker. They are teched for any situation that could come down. But obviously the downside of running so many tech cards is in the matchups where they don't hit, you may have just diluted your deck so much that it can't keep up in terms of raw power and tempo, which many players, I know Crane is one in particular, who would argue by taking out all these weird tech cards in Druid, you raise the overarching power level so much that it is worth not hitting your tech cards in the right matchup.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what it is nice to hit in any matchup, and that's Prince Keleseth for Mitsuhide.
Ooh.
Coming into Vicious Fledgling as well, it seems pretty good.
Exactly. This is the matchup you want to be hitting Vicious Fledgling because, yes, while there are 2 Wraths and to an extent 2 Swipes to be taking them out, the fact that it is demanding one of those right away or you are just going to be running away with the game is an incredibly potent question to be posing to your opponents.
And this isn't a great start by any means for Kylands. Yes, he does have the Wrath, so he can remove the Fledgling, but he's got no Wild Growth, he's got no Jade Blossom, he's got no Nourish. Yes, he has Galactic Crawler, but Mitsuhide doesn't have any Pirates in hand. Oh, I take that back.
There we go, but it is the best pirate to have against Galactic Crawler because you can obviously just charge them straight in the deckhand and the patches to kill them off right away so that there is no chance of Crab having dinner.
Crabs get hungry too, you know.
Yeah, I know. It's literally their name.
Not that one.
The other one.
Other one.
The blue one, yeah.
Alright, Wrath actually being used to remove the Keleseth. That's going to end up being bad news for Kylands. He will have the swipe to remove the Vicious Fledgling next turn, but then he's coining it out and that's everything he's doing? That doesn't seem good. And
this is all the indications that Mitsuhide needed to throw down this Vicious Fledgling as quick as he possibly could. There has to be a second Wrath or a swipe in order to take this out cleanly. Maybe something like a Dirty Rat could come down here for Kylands, but man, is that risky. Yeah,
Dirty Rat actually would just be able to be killed by Mitsuhide regardless of what it pulls out. The backstab, the SI, it just doesn't matter. So the Vicious Fledgling will go face if Dirty Rat is played. Kylands has to swipe.
Yeah, I think we can very much expect to see that as well. The follow-up is not that bad, to be honest. His next couple turns of going for Jade Spirit Behemoth, if he's uninterrupted by pirates and things like that, looks decently powerful to get things going. But if Mitsu can find something like a Chain Gang, a Scalebane, Cairn there over the next couple of turns, he can really put a spanner in the works for Kylands because his own Keleseth buffed minions are going to be way, way stronger than whatever Kylands throws down.
It's quite funny that Mitsuhide has such an awkward hand right now. He got off to a great start, but he could play both of his minions on curve, the deckhand and the SI7 agent, but then he still has 2 pirates flying around. Galactic Crawler would be able to kill one. The SI7 agent didn't actually deal damage to anything relevant.
Yep.
It's not ideal. I like this. If he's just playing the SI7 agent, that's just fine.
Wow, he looks at the situation and assesses, I'm far enough ahead that I don't have to, or I can afford to play around Galactic Crawler, which is a debatable assumption, but one that I would probably agree with. He's seen no ramp from his opponents in the early game, so the chances of an early ultimate infestation is very low. And he also has respectable follow-up, because if any minions do come down from Kylands, he can just fire off his pirates right into it for some additional removal, and then follow up with Cairn Bloodhoof.
Also, 3-mana 4/4s aren't bad at all.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
I usually have a pretty big downside in Hearthstone. We've seen a few of those in the latest expansion. SI7 agent, no downside. Just Keleseth.
And also, I'm really glad that this isn't the other 3-mana 4 in Healdnir Frostrider, because I'm not saying that every cast.
You didn't have to say it just then.
I know, but it was great banter.
Alright, so Mitsuhide going to go ahead with the Delta deckhand, like you said. He's going to have to try and trade everything in, which is kind of inefficient if he wants to continue to play around the crab. No, deckhand's going face. Okay. So, is this an inconsistent strategy, Darren? Playing around the crab one turn, then not the next?
To an extent, yes, but the thing is, now that is... Well, actually, if the crab were to come down now, it kind of interrupts what Kylands is trying to do, but on 5 mana, the only card he's really expecting to play is Nourish, which would mean Nourish for mana and Crab could come down to pretty heavily disrupt what Mitsuhide is doing. Whereas on turn 4, because we haven't seen a Wild Growth, something like Crab Wild Growth is unlikely to happen. And also, just if it's interrupting a Jade Spirit, it's pretty good. I like getting it down at all, because I think it would have been too passive of a turn, and as you can see, he's still very far ahead on board in this situation. But it's an interesting point you raised.
I guess Mitsuhide was hoping that Kylands would either put more pressure on the board, or that Mitsuhide himself would draw something better to play that turn instead of the Salty Deckhand. Scalebane could have been drawn, or something like that, anything for 5 or less mana. Now Kylands, he finally got the Wild Growth. He can get Ultimate Infestation down in 2 more turns. In the meantime, yeah, just throwing up a 3-6 taunt and building up those Jades seems like a pretty good strategy.
It does indeed, but to be honest, the downside here for Kylans is kind of coming into effect. Yes, he has kind of wrestled back board control decently well, but because he's omitting cards like Maya Keeper, which feels all but core in Jade Druid at the moment, and is instead going for these tech cards like Galaka Crawler, even though he hit the Galaka Crawler, he's still not that far ahead, and he's still a decent way away from the Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah, if he picks up a Mind Control tech, then great. He can play the dirtier at Mind Control tech.
That's true.
Spreading Plague is solid this turn if
Yep.
Kylans wants to sacrifice all of his board control and trade it all in.
It's absolutely nuts. He has no choice here but to trade in everything and go for Spreading Plague into Wild Growth.
He could also consider playing the Dirty Rat first, pulling out the minion and then doing it, though there's not really a bonus. If Mitsuhide ends up having a Lich King in hand, then it backfires.
I think it's way more important to go for the Wild Growth here, because getting that Ultimate Infestation down as quick as you can
That's right.
is of utmost importance. It's slightly less powerful the turn after from RNG, as they are emitting the Mark of the Lotuses as well, which means the follow-up dump of cards from their hand might be a little bit slower. They can't go for something like a follow-up of Spreading Plague followed by double Mark of the Lotus, which would be a complete lockdown of the board. But yeah, I think Kylans has only one choice here, as he does let rip with Wild Growth, Spreading Plague, and he's starting to put up a wall against the powerful minions from Mitsuhide, but I wonder if it will be enough.
Now Mitsuhide knows exactly what's happening next turn. There's only one reason you Wild Growth on turn 8. Bone Mare is a pretty good pickup to try and preemptively put a stop to that Ultimate Infestation. Now he can deal with all of these Scarabs. Only one of these minions gets killed by the Ultimate Infestation, and then when you count the Leroy as well, that's more than enough damage to end the game coming in to Kylans next turn.
Exactly. As Kylans throws down Wild Growth and Spreading Plague, Mitsu goes, "You call that a turn? This is a turn." Throws down the Bone Mare.
That was not his accent.
Was that not his accent?
No.
Oh, right. Okay.
It sounded more Australian.
No, never mind. I'll explain after.
Okay.
As he throws down whatever he can with the Ultimate Infestation, but it is just not going to be getting the job done. Game 2 is also going to Mitsuhide as this super tech-heavy druid that even hits Galaka Crawler towards the start of the game still cannot get it done against the sheer board control and aggression of Tempo Rook.
Who even needs Leroy, right? Like, there was just lethal on board there. Unbelievable as Mitsuhide takes his second win in a row. A truly great player. Multiple tournament wins. Everyone should know who this man is as he takes down his second opponent, leaving just Baiza to represent RNG. Now, Baiza really wanted that second place win. They can still get it if they lose this, but if they win it, they just get it immediately. So she's going to want this reverse sweep so much.
She is indeed, and we've seen pretty consistently from her this discard zoo deck with double Howlfiend, double Silverware Golem coming down to try and take it back. But to be honest, I think it's got a pretty dreadful matchup against the Rogue. There are certain cards in there that help it, like the Blood Cell Corsair, which allows you to go very wide on the board, snipe off one of the charges from the weapon. But overall, Howlfiend just allows the Rogue to completely discard everything that the zoo is doing. And unless you get a game like we saw on day 1, I believe, against Alliance, where Baiza discarded her whole hand and then drew perfectly on curve the next 3 turns and still ended up taking it, 80–90% of the time, after the Howlfiend gets rid of everything you're doing, you're just not going to be winning that game.
So she just needs to do that 3 times.
Yes. If she's going for the zoo, I expect to see it, even though it's an unfavorable matchup, because when you're 2-0 down, you not only need to pick a deck that can beat what you're facing now, but what can also beat the next 2 counters from your opponent.
Unfortunately, Baiza has only achieved 1 double kill in this whole tournament, and no full team kills. If she wants to win the series, it's only a team kill that would be good enough to do it, and here it is. Here's the Warlock.
That's right, and what a final boss she has cut out for her, as it is going to be this, once again, the Rogue from Mitsuhide, which has shown so much dominance. She knows how to play this deck probably better than anyone else, because most teams are not playing the discard zoo. She is always on this deck, always performs very well, but while her play might be tip-top, this deck is just not equipped to deal with the Rogue.
We saw a reverse sweep almost from Ostkaka this morning, as he tried to take down Planet Odd from a 2-0 deficit until Zixo came back and knocked Alliance out of the tournament. I'm sure Baiza was watching. She knows it's possible. Can she finish the job? Start the job, do the middle part of the job, and also finish the job.
Yeah. She's got a full day of work ahead of her
She has.
for the next probably hour.
Yep.
And to get things going here, yeah, almost complete toss for Baiza. She knows exactly what she's looking for in a lightning fast mulligan to get things going, and she gets a good amount of what she is looking for.
One drops.
One drops, exactly. Cards like Flame Imp are decent against the Rogue, but not exactly what you're looking for, to be honest. Much more potent against Druid and Priest. But as for the rest of her hand, if she can pick up a Keleseth, something like that, to buff up the patches, it's looking to be a very strong hand to take out the slow start from Mitsuhide.
Mitsuhide, of course, mulliganing away that patches straight away, and this is a slow start. He's going to be spending a majority of this game playing catch-up against the Warlock, and that's not a good position to be in.
You'd much rather be playing Mustard.
Mustard?
Than Ketchup.
Sure. Mustard for battle.
That is a thing that you just said.
Yeah. Mustard made me think of it, okay? Look, I'm a simple mind, okay, Derek?
You're telling me. As now for Mitsuhide, while he can't go for a strong start in terms of his own minions, he can, however, go for a nice reactive turn with the backstab, keep up with what's coming down from Baiza, at least for the start, as Baiza does opt to go for a fairly slow start comparative to what she could have thrown down.
Okay, alright, just going to go with the 1-3, you like that?
Well, obviously it's less weak to the weapon,
yep.
Which would have been one of the main weaknesses of the Acarus Veteran. But the thing is, going for coin into the captain could have been a better way to start solidifying what's going on here.
Yeah.
And you would have had the follow-up of just double one drop to waste a mana on the following turn. But I guess she had this plan all along of just going coin Crystal Weaver to buff up the attack on this demon and the health as well, obviously, leading for a pretty good tempo swing, actually. The 5-4 body here is very nice.
Yeah, this is reasonable. Playing against the strength of the Tar Creeper there by leaving that to attack with the one attack as Mitsuhide plays patches from hand. But hey, it sort of does its job. But now Baiza, she's going to get pretty significantly ahead on this board. She can play the captain, patches, Acarus Veteran. Patches on its own is going to be enough to deal with this Tar Creeper. And then Mitsu's taking 5 damage to the dome.
Yeah. I'm trying to see how Mitsu comes back into this, because maybe with his start of Backstab and Tar Creeper, the stats and the tempo could maybe pull him back in this game. But now that he's drawn patches, has no activator for the Vilespine, he's really looking to fall super far behind, although he does pick up the single best card he could get in that situation. And that, on its own, puts him not only back into the game, but arguably ahead in this situation. Vilespine is an absurdly powerful card.
It's pretty amusing, Derek. On the same breath there, you said, I'm trying to work out how he can get back into the game. And then before I started talking again, he got himself back into the game.
I've had quite a journey while you were sipping your water fountain.
All right, well now, Baiza, Despicable Dreadlord, it's the obvious play on turn 5, but it's not good enough to get rid of this Vilespine Slayer. She might consider just playing both Sour Knight Chain Gangs, which again, I say this every time, would be much nicer after Keleseth had been played.
Wow.
But yeah, she's just trying to be the aggressor here.
It's an interesting play because it is not only less mana efficient, it's kind of weaker to the stat line of the Vilespine Slayer. Obviously, as you said, the taunts allow her to go nice and aggressive, throw this one drop to face. But I think given that Mitsuhide's hand is very board-oriented at the moment. And to be honest, Baiza could have assumed it's very board-oriented because it has been a very slow start for Mitsuhide. Maybe she should have just gone with the Dreadlord because it is giving her the higher, well, not necessarily higher stats, but filling out the mana a bit better, and the stat line lines up much nicer against the Vilespine.
I really liked this play from Baiza, though. Okay, she loses the Despicable Dreadlord, but it sets up for the Silverware Golem, which will be a nasty surprise for Mitsuhide, as Baiza has a good grasp on this board now. Mitsuhide, unfortunately, doesn't have a Bone Mare, which would be the huge punish, though there was no easy way for Baiza to play around that, and just creating the biggest board possible seems to be the best she could do, and she sure did that.
And here, the power of Howlfiend is kind of becoming a bit more apparent, because when it's been thrown down earlier on in the game, the Rogue has had a high enough life total to the point where they feel very comfortable slamming their dagger into it turn after turn, and thus completely destroying the entire hand from their opponents. But here, the 3-6 stat line is not worth Mitsuhide investing some life into discarding his opponent's cards because he is under so much pressure from things like Doomguard or that Soulfire.
Well, there you go. That Baiza can now manipulate the hand in every way she'd like. Someone that agrees with me that Silverware Golem is better in Zoo deck than Gul'dan is. Yep, you're sticking your tongue out. That's great. Classy, Darren. Classy.
I can agree with you a lot of the time. If you tech your deck to go better with it, then yeah, most certainly it can be a very potent card. But I just love Blood Reaver Gul'dan. It's ridiculously powerful.
You're right. And we did finally see it at its most powerful this morning. Dan Gaskin even called me out at the time. Said, Falcone will finally shut up about that. I guess he was wrong.
And yet here you are.
Very much not shutting up.
And now Mitsu is still on the back foot, but he does have some powerful options at the very least to start wrestling this back. If it were to be the Lich King to come down now, trade off into the, I guess, the Councilman, yeah, over the Dreadlord. It's not nice, but I suppose the 1 damage effect isn't going to be doing all too much. It
would mean that if Baiza wants to go face, she'd have to trade everything in, and obviously she then still can't go face. So Baiza's next turn will be... Oh no, she will have to trade everything in because she'll need to trade in the Despicable Dreadlord itself, so it won't get its end of turn effect.
Exactly.
Well, there's not really another option for Mitsuhide here unless there's something that I'm missing. I think he's dead regardless unless he plays this Lich King. I guess he's just trying to work out if there's any reason he'd want to trade with the Dreadlord.
It's definitely very much worth looking at Leroy. But the thing is, if you hold back the Lich King and you get a couple of good cards off of it, maybe... I'm looking at Death Coil to start healing you up a bit. Maybe destroying all your opponent's minions with Death and Decay could be pretty powerful. But in the end, it is definitely worth going for it here and holding back the Leroy and the Shadow Step to maybe start pushing some counter-lethals towards your opponent as the... That's just it. Or is it?
No, it's not.
One off. It's one off. Yeah. No way.
That'll do it, though. That'll get Baiza back in the driving seat. And Death Grip, not what Mitsuhide wanted.
Absolutely.
Probably the worst one in this situation, or one of the worst anyway.
Yeah, it's just not getting the job done. Obviously, Baiza doesn't care at all about losing cards from her deck, and Mitsu drawing a card for 2 mana is a little bit too slow in this particular instance, as it's going to be one-off lethal for Baiza. Mitsu has to have the most powerful comeback I've seen in a very long time if he's going to stand a chance here, and I just don't think this is it. Patches has been pulled from the deck, and I think Baiza might have started the potential for a comeback with this discard zoo.
Yes, it's unbelievable. RNG will be wishing they queued this in the previous game rather than the Druid, but it is the beginning of a very long quest to get back into the semi-finals. Silverware Golem, not so hot in Tempo Rogue.
It isn't indeed. You really just want to get that guaranteed discard effect, and that's arguably why it's less good in a Zoo deck, because you really, really want to be hitting those discard effects. I can agree in this particular one from RNG, though. It's found its home.
Huge round of applause from the audience out there. I could hear it, even with these noise-cancelling headphones on. Clearly, Team China are very, very popular by this audience, and no big surprise there. It is the home team. It's always nice to have some national pride in this type of event, and RNG maybe going to use that to push themselves even more and get Baiza these 3 wins.
I would think so. Mitsuhide saying he even got a little bit of heat last time he beat Baiza because she is such a fan favorite here in China. He was saying she thinks she's one of the most popular players in China, and clearly showing why with this discard zoo. It's not only delivering, you know, some good entertainment value by getting a deck that we don't see very often at all, but also consistently showing the results.
Well, Mitsuhide maybe going to be a little bit glad that he didn't beat Baiza for the 2nd time in a row. He may have gotten a little bit more heat from that one, knocking Baiza out of the path to get 2nd place immediately. And now I'm just sitting here wondering, what is Celestial going to bring next? We've still got Tiddler, we've still got Tom60229. And they need to find a counter to this Zoo deck. They've got Quest Mage as a possibility. They've got a N'Zoth Warrior, which could be a very slow, fatiguey way of taking down the Zoo. Do you have? You're looking at the deck list now. Do you have a favorite?
Well, the world is obviously their oyster, as only the Rogue has been knocked out. The Druid and the Priest obviously already banned out of the way. But of all the decks they have left, to be honest, none of them seem like particularly strong counters.
I like this.
As Tom does go for the very interesting Devil Saw Egg N'Zoth Warrior. Not one that I have seen before this tournament, but maybe the super anti-aggro power of a double Doomsayer N'Zoth Warrior get the job done against this zoo.
Now, I've barely cast Celestial in this tournament. Somehow, I've been dodging them almost every day. I think I've cast one series of them so far, and I've not seen this warrior yet. And looking at the list, I'm very excited by it. I love watching these control fatiguey warriors. I'm a little bit like Korra in that respect, and this is looking like a solid enough counter to me. As you said, the double Doomsayer in this. If the Warlock doesn't have a way of getting rid of that card, the warrior just clears the board and then wins.
That's right. I feel like this is tech to deal much more heavily with the aggressive matchups, as you know, the win condition against control is obvious. You're just shuffling Death Rattles back into your deck, getting the N'Zoth and just overwhelming them with value and basically never fatiguing at the same time. And also, the natural predator of Howlfiend does just happen to be Whirlwind effects, as there is a very high amount of them in Celestial's warrior list. We see double Whirlwind, double Blood Razor, doing a great job of, hopefully, for their sake, just discarding the entire hand from Baiza's discard zoo.
If Baiza's going to win this one, she needs to win it as quickly as she possibly can. The problem with this zoo list, wait for it, is that there's no Gul'dan in the deck, and that is a card that would actually boost their win rate against the warrior significantly. It's a way of coming back onto the board later in the game and actually dealing some damage to the warrior. But with this list, Baiza just has to win fast and win hard, and those two Doomsayers going to make that pretty difficult.
Oh, these are just absolutely perfect for her. She can get, oh sorry, for Tom, sorry, he can get a great hold onto the board, go for something like a Devil Saw Egg whilst there's no tempo coming down from his opponent, which is exactly when you do want to do it, because obviously playing a 3-mana 0/3 can be pretty risky in terms of just falling too far behind on board, but with things like Doomsayer coming down, it could just make quick work of everything that Baiza's trying to do.
I am really surprised to see Tom passing on that turn. With two Doomsayers in hand, I cannot fathom why he'd feel comfortable holding back the first one. What do you think, Derek?
Okay, so in order for them not to go off, it would have to be a pretty powerful follow-up to the Flame Imp in order for it to not have an activation on turn 2. And the thing is, looking at his game plan, he wants to go Doomsayer into Egg. He doesn't want to go Doomsayer into Egg, because that's two of the most powerful anti-aggro cards already thrown out of the way. And so I think, obviously, in this match, he would have really liked to have the Doomsayer already thrown down, because this is a blisteringly fast start for Baiza. I think the potential upside of it not being quite fast enough of a start to kill off the Doomsayer is worth it for Tom, but it is definitely worth debating.
Okay, so Tom can develop the egg here. He doesn't have many other options. The Doomsayer just dies. If he drops the egg, then he can coin out Brawl next turn and definitely end up with a 5/5. And if he doesn't end up with a 5/5, that's fine, because his opponent's board gets cleared. So either way, he kind of wins that Brawl.
But this is really going to be setting off alarm bells for Baiza. Seeing only an egg on turn 3 in terms of the actual board development is nothing from Tom. She has to be expecting some kind of a Whirlwind, Sleep with the Fishes, Blood Razor, Brawl, something to take out this board.
But she's still just putting everything down.
Still just going with full board development. Clearly just taking the quite large risk that there's no powerful board clear for Tom. And to be honest, I think this is an overextension.
I agree. That was... the alarm bells should have been ringing, but they weren't. There's the Brawl. Baiza not even reacting to it. Stone cold right now. Quickly glanced towards Tom as she sees that the 1/1 Patches survives.
Patches is truly in charge now. Well, until he gets eaten by a baby dinosaur, of course. But now the follow-up for Tom is fairly strong as well, to be honest. He can just trade the the Devil Saw into the Dreadlord quite happily in this situation, I think.
Stick up a Taunt.
Follow up with the Taunt, follow up with Armor Smiths. As soon as a Whirlwind effect is found, he can go with Sleep with the Fishes. Or maybe these double Doomsayers on this turn or the next would be worth throwing down just to get a clear board over the next turn or two.
This is the turning point, and I'm not even sure Baiza was overly punished by playing that Saronite Chain Gang last turn. She still got a little bit of reload, and from where I'm sitting, it looks like no matter what she's got, she is not getting back onto this board anytime soon, and this is already looking like a one game to Tom in my eyes.
It is looking that way to me indeed, especially because this deck from RNG, we've seen its power in the early game with things like Malkazar's Imp into the Howl Fiend, the ridiculous power of Keleseth into Captain, as well as the ability to run every single early game card in the Zoo's arsenal is obviously very strong, but she is completely omitting, I believe, the Bone Mares, the Bone Mares, the Blood Reaver Gul'dan, the Cairn, all the late game card has been completely gutted from this deck.
Yeah, and Tom's playing this nice and slow. Played both Doomsayers there, fitting in an armor up every turn. Next turn he can play the Taunt and then armor up again. Then he's got, or just drop the Armor Smith. Like either way, there's no way Baiza gets through this without attacking into the Taunt unless she plays the Soulfire, and that doesn't work out perfectly either.
This has been absolutely beautifully played in the last couple of turns from Tom. You know, at this, when there was the one attack minion in patches left on Baiza's board, he could have gone for the Dire Horn on curve, but then Doomguard takes it out perfectly. Whereas if he goes for Doomsayer, there isn't that same ability to clear off everything from Tom. So, you know, perfectly playing around all the outs here for Baiza and leading up to having a strong board on turn 7, so he can then follow up with Garrosh and just completely destroy everything from Baiza.
I like the Soulfire here. There was some talk about Evolution's play yesterday and how Old Boy let some Armor Smiths live for a little bit too long, and Baiza's not taking that risk. Gonna try and prevent Tom from gaining too much health.
Oh, but even the positioning here from Baiza is kind of lazy, to be honest. The ability for Blood Reaver Gul'dan, for the Garrosh to come down and take the minimum amount of damage possible could have been avoided from Baiza. She could have forced him to take 4 rather than 2 here. It's probably not going to make much difference, but this is where Baiza needs to slow down with her play. She's a very quick player, and in situations like this, you need to consider things like positioning.
This is the best Baiza's got. She's got to just play the Soulfire, get rid of the minion, and just hit the face as much as she can. Tom's going to be taking at least 4 damage next turn if he wants to face tank the weapon. So he's getting a little bit low, but then there's the shield block, and then there's the more taunts that he can draw. And so many tools to just get that armor back up.
Yeah, there are so few things. I mean, to be honest, he really doesn't need any other cards for the rest of the game. The Shadowmourne here in combination with double fishes and the new hero power, which often is a side grade rather than an upgrade to the armor up, but in this instance is absolutely ridiculous.
What I will say is there's no Mountain Fire armor in Tom's deck, so he might struggle a little bit later on, unless we just haven't seen them yet. That is a possibility.
We have only seen 21, I believe maybe now like 22 out of the cards as we see the second egg, but yes, it's worth bringing up that we haven't seen them yet. So maybe against the control decks like Taunt Warrior, where that extra armor gain can be very influential, will make it a bit weaker. But just look at the eggs in this situation. It's just all-out board control. As Baiza throws it down, Celestial are heading to the Grand Finals.
That is a huge win for Tom, 60229, and Team Celestial. Mitsuhide got to be proud of his performance there.